الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله ولي الصالحين وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين اللهم صل وسلم على عبدك ورسولك محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن دعا بدعوته واستنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين وسلم تسليما كثيرا. Amma ba'd. All praises are due to Allah, Lord of the worlds, and surely Allah is the friend and protector of the righteous. And I bear witness that Allah is one and has no partners, and that Muhammad, the son of Abdullah, is his servant and his last messenger, and may Allah always and constantly send peace and blessings to Muhammad, to his family, to his companions, to all those who call to his way and establish his sunnah to the day of judgment. As to what follows, my beloved brothers and sisters, I begin with the greeting words of the righteous. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, it is a great honor and privilege for me to be here today. And I pray that Allah would bless the honorable imams and leaders and mothers and fathers and children who are here. May Allah Azza wa Jal protect you and bless you and give you motivation and strength in these very difficult times that we are going through. It is especially a privilege to be here in the Abu Bakr Mosque. And as our Imam Abdul Razak was saying, in 1985, when the first Somali people were coming into Canada, there were 2 Somalis in the Jami Mosque. And I knew both of them. And then suddenly the mosque became filled, and I began to learn the secrets of the Somali community. Dir, Ishaq, Darod, Majratain, Hawiya, Rahanwain, Midigani, Jarir. These are secrets known by the community. And this is a nation which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given a great blessing to in the love of the Book of Allah. And I pray that Allah would bless that land with peace and with unity. And with dignity and equality. The event that we are going through here is part of a program given to the students of Al-Maghrib Institute called Western Sunrise. The students are sitting for 17 hours. In the last 2 weekends, they sit with me for 17 hours studying. This is how serious we are about this. And I want to give you something from this knowledge so that it would not only be a small group of people, but that the whole community could benefit from this crucial knowledge about Islam and about our position in the world. Because I believe the time is right for Muslims to come forward to give the beauty of Islam to the world. Recently, information has come from the north that a huge crack has happened in the polar ice caps. And this crack is so large that an iceberg will be breaking off the size of New York City. It will be breaking off and going into the water. And when this happens, and when the continued warming of the seas and our environment continues, then we are going through a phase as a human race. We are going through a serious phase, and that is that the whole climate is changing now. We see the weather here in Calgary and Toronto. Last week the sun was out, it was warm. This weekend I expected to come to Calgary and to Alberta to find bitter cold, but instead it was warm outside. My son-in-law wrote me from Saudi Arabia and said, it's snowing in Tabuk. It's snowing in Saudi Arabia, but it was warm in Calgary. So the world is in tremendous change. The environment is in change. And there is a need for a way of life where people can connect themselves to the Creator. They can still be involved in technology, but at the same time, they have the morality and the connection with their Lord. The economic system is going through a tremendous change. And we are seeing now because of the system of interest and usury, we are seeing now an implosion, an explosion from the inside that is happening. And so there is a need for a system where people do not exploit each other. A system where you have private property, but at the same time, you do not have monopoly. Nobody controls everything. You don't have a 1%. Muslims have a solution. We have a solution to the environmental problem. We have a solution to the spiritual crisis that many people are facing in the world also today. And that lies in the Quran when Allah Azza wa Jal tells us in Surah Al-Fatiha, Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. You alone, Allah, do we worship, and from you alone do we seek assistance. And so we have great gems of wisdom to give society. We are an alcohol-free society. It's Friday night, and we smile and enjoy each other and laugh and have fun. Nobody's drinking alcohol. Alcohol and drugs have become a major problem in this society today. So there is a need for a society that is not depending upon chemicals, not depending upon exploitation, where people are not judged by the color of their skin. We have some solutions to this. But in order to be able to give the solution, we have to have confidence in ourselves. We have to understand who we really are. If we do not understand what Islam is and who we really are, we will not have the confidence to be able to help anybody else. We also need to understand, and especially the younger generation, we need to understand the history of the land that we are living in. We need to understand the people here. And we need to be able to go back in history and see what is the role of Muslims. Were Muslims here in the Americas, North, Central, and South America before? If they were, what happened to them? What was their contribution? And so I want to shed light on just a few aspects of this major topic to try to give you some information. But the students in Al-Maghrib will be continuing intensively tomorrow in the study to try to come up with solutions and another understanding. Number one, when we look at the first message of Islam, we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after having given books to Moses, the Torah to Moses, the Psalms to David, the Gospels, the Injil to Jesus, the final testament, Al-Quran, came in order to protect the books. And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ saw himself as the seal or the finality of the prophets, not the first prophet of Islam. And in Surah An-Nahl, this is the chapter of the bee. In verse 36, Allah Azza wa Jal tells us, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, وَلَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رَسُولًا أَنْ اعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتَ. And verily, we have sent to every nation a messenger, that they would worship one God and stay away from false deities. They would worship one God. And so based on this, when we look at the verse, it said, وَلَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ. Every nation, in the continents, have received the messenger. And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was the finality, the seal. And so prophets came to China, prophets came to India, prophets came to Africa, prophets came to Europe, prophets came to the Americas. Right here in these lands, we believe that at one point in time, there were messengers. That Islam was here hundreds of years ago, before the time of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, there were Muslims in these lands. Because the word Muslim only means one who submits to the will of God. And so based on this, we need to have another understanding of these lands, another understanding of people who are not necessarily in our faith, that we respect other people's faith and realize every child is born as a Muslim. Every child is born on the fitrah, as the Prophet ﷺ has informed us. The second point, which is very important for us, is that this is concerning the Americas. The brothers are fixing the slides over here, inshallah, it's on the way. But at least the sisters, you can see over there, right? Okay, if you look in that picture, and I'll say it to the brothers who can't see, it says, Christopher Columbus discovered America in 1492. Now this is what we're studying as Maghrib students. But you look in the picture, right? And you see people in the picture other than Columbus. What we understand now is that people entered these lands possibly 20,000 years ago. They entered into the Americas. And some estimates say that when Columbus came to America, there were over 75 million people living in the Americas with great civilizations. The people of the northern countries who had their capital in the present day St. Louis. Over 100,000 people, 3-story buildings. The great Iroquois Confederacy, who gave the Constitution of the United States its basis. The basis of the Iroquois Confederacy was a unity of different groups. And Benjamin Franklin, a famous person in American history, went to the Iroquois and sat down with them. And the Iroquois showed them, you need to unite your 13 colonies. The symbol of the Iroquois was an eagle grasping 7 arrows. That was the symbol, unity. Because one arrow will break, but you hold them together, you can't break it. So the basis of the Constitution was adopted, and the symbol of the United States also became an eagle that was grasping 13 arrows. So the point that I came to as a young man, and I say to you, is this statement, Christopher Columbus discovered America in 1492, is that a correct statement? No. Why is it not correct? It's in the book. But if you look at the picture, my question is, a very simple question, how can you discover a place when the people are standing there looking at you? It's like if I came to Calgary, it's my first time in Calgary, and I say Abdullah Hakim discovered Calgary in 2012. I discovered you. And if I say this, that means I am denying your humanity. I am denying your civilization. So the first thing we understand is that we need to now have another outlook on information. And we in Al-Maghrib, we came to the conclusion that Christopher Columbus was discovered in 1492 because he was lost and he bumped into America on his way to India and he called the people Indians. They're not Indians, but that's the name that he gave them. So we need to be able to rearrange our thinking in terms of information. Number 3, when Islam is shown in the television, in the movies, unfortunately, it is usually connected with violence, with fighting, terrorism, blowing things up. But what is the reality of the Muslim world? What we are finding out between the 7th and 16th century, Muslims were leading the world in sciences, leading the world in civilization. It is called the Dark Ages in Europe. But for Muslims who were living in Spain and Portugal, in Granada, Toledo, Seville, Valencia, they were leading the world. How is this possible? How can you Muslims say you're involved in science? You spend most of your time making salat. A Muslim is a natural scientist, an astronomer, a geographer. Why is this? Because every time you make salat, you need to know the direction of Mecca. You need to know the Qibla. Every Muslim wants to know direction. So therefore, it was a natural thing for the Muslims to understand the stars and their relationship to human beings, to understand the shape of the earth, because we have to make pilgrimage to Mecca, and that means you need to make a long journey to Mecca. So it was a natural thing for Muslims then to lead the world in terms of geography, navigation. Some very interesting points come up. Encyclopedias, almanacs, and especially in astronomy you see the great contributions that Muslims made. And you will see the astrolabe. These are astrolabes in the picture. You will see the sextant. You will see that Muslims were traveling in the oceans. They were traveling all throughout the planet, making great discoveries. But unfortunately, that's not in the book. Today, I want to show you about some of the journeys that Muslims made into the Americas, to give you a taste of what our study is. A great author, a great historian, who was known by Ibn Khaldun as the Imam of the historians, his name was Al-Mas'udi. And in his book, Muruj al-Dhahab wa Ma'adin al-Jawhar, Al-Mas'udi is writing about the journey of a man named Khashqas ibn Sa'id, that he went into the ocean, Atlantic Ocean, he met a people, he came back to Cordoba, and everybody in Al-Andalus knew about the journey of Khashqas. Abu Bakr ibn Umar al-Quttiyya also wrote about the journey of a man, Ibn Farukh, and his journey into the sea. Al-Idrisi, a famous writer, also spoke about the journey of a group of people that called them Maghariba. Al-Idrisi is writing in the 11th century. It's Kitab al-Masalik wal-Mamalik wal-Masalik. In this text, Idrisi is writing, and he talks about the journey of a group of sailors who go into the Atlantic. They reach islands. They are blindfolded, taken to a king, and the king is speaking to them in Arabic language. It's in Idrisi's book. And they returned. Al-Umari, another famous author, is writing about the journey of Muslims from West Africa who went across the ocean and they landed in the Americas. This is startling information. And I want to give you some idea of this information because it is changing people's understanding of history itself. If you look at this map, and this is what it looks like, an upside down map. It's too bad you're sitting here, actually. You could sit in the chairs, you'd see it better. It looks like an upside down map, but this is the other way around. You will see in this, the earliest, right there, I'm showing to the brothers. If you look at the map closely, you can see your continents. Okay? Okay, this is right side up. You see Saudi Arabia here, and then India, China, and here there's a landmass, and it was called by Al-Mas'udi Ard Majhula, unknown territory. This is 956. It is the first recorded map of the Americas, and it is still with us today. A startling map came to the Ottomans, and this was in 1517. A man by the name of Piri Rais, he presented to the Ottoman Sultan Salim I an astonishing map. This map is in the Topkapi Museum. If you look closely at the map, you will see in 1517, Piri Rais has the South American coastline. Look at the coastline as I go along here. That's an exact map of the South American coastline. How could Piri Rais in 1517 have a detailed map of South American coastline? So this evidence is now overwhelming. It is coming to us. And what we are finding is that people are traveling along what is called the currents. The current will take you from West Africa right here. in Senegal, and it will take you right into Brazil. You don't even have to have sails. And in order to prove this, we have the Arab dhow, of course, the famous boat of the Arabs. But in order to prove this, a Scandinavian, a Norwegian scientist named Thor Heyerdahl, he took a boat. This is an actual picture of his boat. He had African people make the boat, and they traveled across. He traveled by himself across the Atlantic. His boat is still in Oslo, Norway today. He made another one called the Kontiki, and he traveled across the Pacific. Okay? So this is evidence, hard evidence, that Columbus was not the first person to discover America. I mean, Canadians, we know anyway about Leif Erikson. Americans may not know this, but we understand about Leif Erikson in Newfoundland, right? That the Scandinavian Vikings came in the early times into Canada. What is interesting for us, and this is really important for Black History Month, trying to understand some famous voyages. There is a famous Muslim king who lived in the empire of Mali. This is West Africa. His name was Mansa Musa. This is a very important name. Mansa Musa, in 1324, he made a journey across the Sahara Desert. And he came into Egypt. He made pilgrimage to Mecca with 72,000 people. He carried with him 15,000 camels laden with gold. Where did he get this money from? He was one of the richest people in the world at the time. And he told the story to the historians in Cairo. He told the story of his older brother Abu Bakr, who went into the Atlantic Ocean with 2,000 ships, and he never returned. This is recorded information that we find in Al-Umari's writing. Now I want to show you where Mansa Musa comes from. This is your picture of the Sahara Desert. And if you see the Sahara Desert, in the northern part where the circle is, what is present-day Tunisia, this was once known as Ifriqiya. Ifriqiya, which came from an ancient Phoenician or Greek word, Afrigo. But the Muslims Arabicized the word and used it in a modern sense, and this was modern-day Tunisia. The governor of Ifriqiya sent caravans across, and he realized that across the desert in West Africa were some of the largest gold mines in the world. So he dug wells along the routes. And this is what it looks like in the Sahara Desert. I took this picture myself near the city of Timbuktu in the Great Sahara. And these are the Tuareg people living in the middle of the desert. Wells were dug along the roads. And now people were able to move freely along the trade routes to go south. What happens after this? Major trade routes are developed. And I want to show you some of the routes to show you how this trade actually developed. The first route, major route, you can see, it starts in Tripoli and it goes down to Ghadames, across the desert to Bilma and to Bornu. That's the first major highway. And if you saw the recent conflict in Libya, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give peace and justice and unity to Libya, you will see that much of their conflict is in the Sahara. Okay, so this is a known trade route from Tripoli. The second major trade route is the one that takes you from Qayrawan in Tunisia down to Tahert, Tadmekka, and into a place called Gao. The third major trade route is taking you from Fez to Sijil Masa and then down into the empire of Ghana. And so this is how the trade went. So the cities that were south of the desert became fabulously rich. Huge amounts of gold were actually moving from south north. And so it became a very important place. And the trade made the kings of Mali fabulously rich. This is where Mansa Musa got the wealth from. When Mansa Musa made his journey to Egypt, this is Mansa Musa in the map. You see on the right side is Mansa Musa. On the left side is the Tuareg from the desert. Right? Mansa Musa probably didn't have a crown like that. But you see the size of the gold in his hand? It's like a grapefruit. This map was drawn by a European cartographer. Mansa Musa went to Mecca, as I said, with 72,000 people. Could you imagine crossing the Sahara Desert in 1324 with 72,000 people? 15,000 camels laden with gold? He had so much gold with him, he changed the economy of every country that he reached. When he came into Egypt, Egypt was being controlled by the Mamluks, the great Mamluk warriors, the Bahri Mamluks. The Bahri Mamluks fell in love with Mansa Musa. And they said, this is a very pious person. He is diligent in his salat. He is reading his Quran all the time. And so the Mamluks gave Mansa Musa a special Mamluk bodyguard to make his pilgrimage to Mecca. And that was the greatest honor that you could have at that time in the world, to have the Mamluks around you. And so Mansa Musa was a great king. And when he returned, he traveled, he found a city called Timbuktu. Now many of us used to hear the word Timbuktu. It's something you learn new today. Before, in our generation, we used to say Timbuktu, oh, go to Timbuktu. That means you're lost. Like Timbuktu was out in space. But Timbuktu was the center of the trade. It was the center of the trade going. And also, when Mansa Musa reached Timbuktu, he found an empire of knowledge. Now this is something you do not hear about Africa. We are not aware of this. Many of us did not even know that there were Muslims in this part of Africa. But it is a great center of Islamic learning. Timbuktu, named after a woman named Baktu, and Timbuktu in Tamashek, which is a Tuareg language, it means the well of Baktu. So Baktu dug a well. She used to take care of the goods of the Tuareg. She dug a well, and the city came around the well called Timbuktu. Timbuktu became a great center of knowledge. The ulama from Timbuktu were famous, and their writings are famous. This is one of their Qur'ans, beautiful Qur'ans that they were writing in this area and given to the rest of the world. At the height of knowledge, imagine in the 16th century, in Timbuktu, there was over 25,000 students in the Sankore University. 25,000 students, 150 Quran schools. Every single house in Timbuktu had Hafiz al-Quran, had somebody who had memorized the Quran. And so it was a great center of learning, and the students were not only studying Islamic studies, but they were studying astronomy, medicine, geography, mathematics. It was an integrated curriculum that they were studying there in Timbuktu. And so it is from the people of Timbuktu, especially a particular group called the Mande people, Mandinka. From this group, under the Mali kings, remember Mansa Musa said, my older brother, Abu Bakr, he went into the ocean with 2,000 ships. He never came back. Now, what does this have to do with America? We are finding now in South America, we are finding inscriptions of Mandinka writings. They traveled along the Amazon River, into Peru, into Panama, up into Mexico. A Harvard University scholar named Leo Weiner, who wrote a book called Africa and the Discovery of America. he showed that these Mandinka Muslims actually came into the United States and they mixed with the First Nation people in the United States. Archaeological finds. A famous European professor named Alfred von Wuthenau in Mexico City, he found heads, he found sculptures. These are sculptures of people before Columbus. And look at the face. How did this come into Mexico? How did these people make it to this part of the world? Look at this face here in the picture. If you look closely, you will see he has scarification on the face, which is used in West Africa. He also has a turban and a cap. That's a Muslim there. This is not a sculpture from West Africa. This is from Mexico. That's not a Mexican in front of you, right? This is hard evidence, man. This is not fantasy. This is hard evidence in front of you. Look at this face here. That scarification on the face, when you have a lot of melanin in your skin and you get a cut, it will leave a little welt. It is scarification. That is a West African. This was found in Mexico before Columbus. So what is happening here? Why, when the Spanish came to America, they found people in Panama. Balboa found the people in Panama. They found them in Mexico. They found them all in the Caribbean islands. And they realized there were African people living in the Caribbean before the time of the Spanish. And they had mixed with the indigenous Hispanic people. They had mixed with them. And we can trace it directly back to the journey of Mansa Abu Bakr with 2,000 ships and also other journeys that came out of West Africa at that time. Another point in American history, when America first was founded, there was 13 colonies. And they needed to be recognized in the world. They made a revolution against the British Crown. Okay, you see people talk about the Tea Party, right? The Tea Party. Right? They couldn't take the taxes. Now these 13 colonies needed to be recognized. The first country to recognize America was Morocco. It was the Sultan of Al-Maghrib. And a treaty was made between the Moroccan leader and George Washington. That treaty and the writing between Washington is found today in the Smithsonian Institute. And the treaty was, any Muslim, anybody underneath the Sultan who is captured as a slave, who comes into the Americas, must be immediately freed from slavery. He must be free. This is the treaty between George Washington and the Sultan of Morocco. When the American colonies did make their revolution, you don't hear about some of these names. I want to give you some of the proof. A person by the name of Yusuf Ben Ali, known as Joseph Ben Haley, who fought with General Sumter in South Carolina, 1732. Bampet Muhammad was a corporal in the Revolutionary War, 1775 in Virginia. Peter Salim, his name was Peter Buckminster. Okay, this is Salim. And also Salim Poor, who fought in Massachusetts. These are all Muslims. Francis Sabah, he was a sergeant in the Continental Army. Joseph Sabah was also in the army. When you see their gravestones, there are gravestones that has a star and a crescent on it. That's how they would bury the Muslims. So these Muslims fought in the Revolutionary War. The Muslims actually recognized the 13 colonies before any other nation in the world. When you continue on, you will see that Muslims were caught in slavery. This was a very difficult period of time in American history. But the proof that is coming to us today is that somewhere between 15 to 30% of the slaves and political prisoners taken to America were Muslims. Almost 1 in 3 of African Americans in Brazil, in the Caribbean, in the United States was a Muslim. Now you see why Afro-Americans accept Islam so fast. It seemed like it was a strange thing, right? But it is a natural thing because it is part of what we call roots. It is part of the heritage. And that is the reason why Black History Month was founded, in order to tell the true story of America. The story that's been wiped out in history, to bring that forward. And so, Muslims in early America. The first slaves who were taken to America was Senegambia. They were the first people in the New World by the Portuguese. In 1522, the Wolof of Hispaniola, they led a great slave revolt. These are the people of Senegal, who are very strong Muslims. They revolted in Puerto Rico. They revolted in Panama, until the king of Portugal said to his slave people, don't bring any more Muslims into the Americas. No more Muslims. Because of the rebellions that were going on inside of the colonies. This is something that we didn't know for a long period of time. I want to read you the name. I'm giving you a taste of this knowledge, because we don't have the time to go into the details. But I want to give you a taste of this knowledge. These are some of the actual people that we find in history, which is coming to us now. Muhammad Kaaba, he was from Buka, from Malinke, Guinea. He studied to be a judge, a qadi, and he was captured at 20 years old, and he was deported to Jamaica. Abu Bakr Siddiq, who was a scholar, an alim, a cleric, from Timbuktu. He was from Timbuktu. And he was captured and taken to Jamaica in 1834. We have the writings of Abu Bakr, who was writing in Jamaica in classical Arabic language. They were writing from the city into the countryside. Also in Brazil, a major slave revolt happened in 1835 in Brazil. In Suriname, all around the region, there's a strong presence of Muslims in the Americas. Saleh Bilali was captured at 14 years old, riding from Jenne to Kiana. He spent 60 years in slavery. He was Muslim. Bilali Muhammad, a famous scholar cleric, was enslaved on the Sapelo Islands in Georgia. Old Lizzie Gray, a famous Muslim woman, okay? And when they tried to convert her to Christianity, they said to her, tell us about Christ. You know what her answer was? And they're talking in a different kind of language. She said, Christ built the first church in Mecca, and his grave was there. Does anybody know what she was trying to say? They thought she was converted to Christianity, right? But she said Christ, so she's not going to tell the truth, right? Who was she talking about? He built the first church in Mecca. She really meant Medina, right? But she didn't say. She's talking in secret language. And his grave is there, right? That's Medina. So she was talking about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Fatima or Phoebe, the wife of Bilali Muhammad, also a famous Muslim woman. To give you now, I want to show you the pictures of the scholars. These are pictures of Muslims who were captured and taken to the Americas. This first picture, this is a picture of Ayub ibn Sulaiman, a great scholar of the Quran. He wrote the whole Quran from his memories. And this book can be found in the Smithsonian Institute today. They were also writing the Risala of Ibn Abi Zayd al-Qayrawani, a famous Maliki text. We can find it in America today, in classical Arabic language. These books are popping up all over the place. You see the Arabic writing on the board? These are the writings of people who were in slavery. Ayub, also Ibrahim, Abdurrahman ibn Ibrahim. You can see his Arabic writing here. You see on the bottom? It said, Ismuhu Abdurrahman. Okay? This is a person, he was a leader, a great leader, an Amir. He was captured, taken to America. He was writing Arabic. When they realized he was writing in Arabic, they sent a letter to Washington, D.C., and the President of the United States said, this man is supposed to be free. So they freed him from slavery. And he returned to West Africa. He died. He landed in Liberia and he made 2 rakats. He came from the Fulani people of Timbo. He never made it home, but he made it back to the shores of Africa. You can find his story. It's a book called Prince Among Slaves. If you want to, you can even buy it online. It's a movie. It's called Prince Among Slaves, right? By Terry Alford. Yaro Mahmud. Yaro Mahmud lived 70 years in slavery. He lived to be 128 years old. And he is considered to be the patriarch of African American Muslims. 128 years old. Interesting thing though, I want to show you here. If you look closely, you see the writing here? Abdurrahman was taken to a society in the north after he left Mississippi, and they thought that he had converted, and they wanted to use him for a missionary to spread dawah amongst Muslims in West Africa, I suppose. So you will see the writing here. The person in this missionary society said, "Can you write the Lord's Prayer in Arabic?" It says there, the writing says right there, the Lord's Prayer written by Abdurrahman in my presence, right? They were going to use it for dawah, right? To spread their message as missionaries. So Abdurrahman said, okay, I will write you the Lord's Prayer, right? You know the Lord's Prayer, it would be, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. So he would probably say, Rabbuna alladhi fis sama. That's how it would start, right? What did he say? Look what it says. He said, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. He wrote the Fatiha. He wrote the opening chapter of the Quran. And now, only now, people are going back and seeing what he wrote, right? It wasn't the Lord's Prayer. But this is resistance, right? This is a form of resistance to the very sad situation that they found themselves in. Umar bin Sayyid, who wrote his whole life story in Arabic, a great scholar. His works are now found in a museum, an Islamic museum in Jackson, Mississippi. So these are some of the great leaders and teachers, and you can see their writings here. I want to show you their writings. These documents are being brought up from Brazil, from Jamaica, from Suriname, from the United States, especially in the Carolinas. This is Bilali Muhammad, and you will see their writings and what they are doing. It is a great legacy here in the Americas. What is important about this legacy is that this is the reason why African Americans accept Islam so fast, right? For a long time, people did not know what the reason is. It is because it is a strong part of American society. It is something we have not understood and needs to be brought open to the public so the public can see. These are the documents we're bringing out now. We're bringing these documents to the surface. This is written in Brazil, in Suriname. Now, if you look on the right side of the board, it is the letter sent by the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ to Najashi, the great emperor of Ethiopia, the first Hijrah. On the left is a letter which is written by slaves in Brazil. This is cultural continuity. This is a living tradition that has stood the test of time and which is still alive in the Americas. But the three most important aspects that the slaves, those who suffered in America, the three most important aspects where you can distinguish them. Number one, Tawheed, a strong belief in one God. Number two, Tahara. They had purity. Purity of mind, purity of their bodies, purity of their relationship. And three, Al-Amru bil-Ma'ruf wa Nahy Munkar, calling to the good and forbidding evil. And one of the greatest parts of this legacy that I want to leave you with, there's a very famous person, they always mention him on Black History Month. His name is Malcolm X. How many of you have heard of Malcolm X before? Raise your hand. I think most people have heard of Malcolm X. What does he usually look like? What does he have on when you look at him? He has a nice suit, right? He's very clean dressed in his suit. I want to show you a picture of Malcolm X, which is a rare picture. This is Malcolm X in the clothes of the ulama. That's Malcolm X. That's him before he died. See that picture, Sheikh? That's him. Imama, right? Jubbah. What does he have in his hand? He has a book, education. Right? Study the book of Allah. Educate yourselves. Right? This is the legacy that came out of those who suffered in the slavery period. And those who were able to maintain themselves and are now coming back into Islam. And this is an important lesson that we can give to the society today. We have a lot to give. And we need to now give back to Alberta. Give back to Canada. Become part of the society. See how the masjid can do something for the community. Homelessness, alcoholism, drug abuse, racism, wife assault. Whatever we can do to hold hands with those people of conscience in this society, now is the time. Now is the time for us to come forward. But we need to have respect for ourselves. We need to understand our history. We need to understand where we came from, the positive and the negative. And we need to be able to project to the future. That inshallah, we can be part of a society where human beings will come together. We will benefit nature instead of destroying nature. We will benefit our environment instead of destroying the environment. We will have a strong economy instead of destroying the economy. This is the good aspects of Islam that we can give, and we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would bless us to be part of a new movement for a better society and a better world. So I want to leave you with these thoughts, and I ask Allah Azza wa Jal to bless the masjid, Masjid Abu Bakr, to the Imam Abdul Razak, Imam Jamal, all the ulama. May Allah bless you and protect you and strengthen you. May Allah help this beautiful province, Alberta. You're rising now. I'm coming from Ontario. Everybody's heading west now. Heading to Alberta now. And we need to be part of this, boom, to give a positive aspect to it, inshallah. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم وستذكرون ما أقول لكم وأفوض أمري إلى الله والله بصير بالعباد والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.